Andre, I think it says a lot about you and the company that you were able to attract some of these kind of blue chip investors, particularly given the fact that there's so much noise about AI out there. You know, every new biotech has some sort of AI play. What was there a key attribute or a key piece of technology or a key aspect of yourself and your founding team that you think helped to attract some of those investors in a short period of time?
Yeah, I do have an outstanding team, and I think it was the right place and right time. And we should not forget about this too. Like we raised our first round, we raised $11 million seed from Kleiner, Greylock, and others um, at in the very beginning of 2022, which was a very peak of venture industry just before it became really sour. And the tech investment climate, especially in AI space, at that time looked way better than bio investment climate, which I didn't realize until after we pivoted into bio that like actually, the investment was actually quite quiet at that time, right? But in tech, things were really peaking. So we got lucky with timing of our first round. But also answering your question, of course, the biggest reason was the team. Like I had my tech pedigree, which of course helps a lot when you approach investors. And also my co-founders are incredible AI researchers with like 50 plus prior deep neural nets that they trained for different companies from Intel and Nivea to um, uh, Pepsi and Nestle and whatnot. So like my co-founders had incredible experience before that, working at the deepest level of ML AI research. And so, yes, of course, every company right now is AI enabled. It's obvious. Like every company at the moment is using internet, right? Like it wasn't the case back in the 90s. It's one thing that you're using some neural nets or you're training some models for a specific target that you're working on, a specific therapeutic programs, and you help yourself to progress this program forward with some computational tools. There's a whole different game of trying to build foundational technology that would be target agnostic, that would generalize across many targets and potentially many modalities, and that would really change the game for potentially hundreds of or thousands of biotechs out there if it's successful. And that is what we are up to, right? We're trying to build something that would be an enabling technology for many, many programs across different targets, different indications, and potentially different modalities too.
In addition to founding Bioptic, you also co-founded Mesto in 2020, which is a community of Russian-speaking entrepreneurs. And I'm curious about what the war, Russia and Ukraine, has meant for your business, if it's impeded you in any way, or what you might say about that conflict and its impact.
I know there's always some war and people suffering around the world, but for me personally, as someone who was born in Soviet Union, I immigrated out of Russia 20 years ago. Um, for me, this particular war has been the most heartbreaking, horrible geopolitical event in history. Um, the vastness of this crime, the invasion of Ukraine, the destruction of its cities, and the conquest of their territories, all those things that Russia started in 2022, I cannot describe by any word by a crime. And of course, it had ginormous impact on me personally, on my community, and on our business as well. Um, well, first of all, like we work with some partners who are physically in Ukraine right now, and which means that you have to work around like some horrific facts that, sometimes there might be a bomb destroying their house, or there could be electricity outages for hours and days. So that is obviously a huge impact. Apart from that, like part of my team are Ukrainians, and some of my key people on the leadership team, who are now in US, are actually came here as refugees from Ukraine. So that is also a significant factor, of course. And besides, as I mentioned before the recording, I think the fact that this war began in February 2022 really forced me as a founder to start this company and raise capital way earlier than I otherwise would have. Because, we were playing with hypotheses, we were contemplating different product ideas. But when the war began, it became obvious to me that we're going to have to be in position to help a lot of people who would need help. Some outstanding tech talent, AI talent from Ukraine and from Russia too, who had to flee from Putin's regime, will need to find their new way of living in different places they would end up, and they would need jobs, and we could help. So in a way, we have some outstanding AI people working for us, which otherwise it would be hard for us to hire, because they were all employed in some, tech giants or like Kiev-based startups. But because of the war, they needed a job, and we were there to help. So yes, it's a very complex topic for me, but the simple answer to your question, of course, this war had ginormous impact on us, both from business standpoint, from the team standpoint, and from the personal standpoint as well.
And that, my friends, is a difficult question to pivot away from. Tough to find a segue to away from that one. So I'm just going to make it rough. You said something earlier, Andre, that piqued my interest. You were talking about your partnerships, the number of partnerships that you have going, and then you mentioned a couple of in-house programs.
Yes.
What can you share about that, if anything?
I will try to share as much as possible. I cannot share some of the names because of the deals that we have that we require, like marketing approval. But in broad strokes, we have 13 small molecule programs we're working on at the moment, all preclinical. All are highly novel chemical matter, sometimes known targets. Some of the targets are completely new. Roughly half of them are academia partnerships. So these are the first ones we started with, and that was pretty much the way. I think of those investments from our side as sort of a way to test our technology, but also it's a marketing expense, right? So in those partnerships, we do all the computational drug discovery work, but we also synthesize chemical matter, and then like the partner would run their assays and test the compounds that we synthesize. And so obviously it costs money, but I think it's worth it because in case, we are not ready to publish those results yet, but the results look really promising. So once those papers are out, that's going to be a great way for us to market the platform. But closer to the July last year, we signed our first industry partnership. And I think this is one interesting thing that differentiates BIOPTIC, is that I do think we found an interesting angle into the industry, which is different from what I've seen before. And that is partnering with venture creation funds or bio investors to help them de-risk their asset companies, like single asset companies that they invest in, or help them boost progress on those programs they invest in. And as far as I can see, we are pretty unique in this approach. Like we developed a bunch of tools that are sort of investor facing and helping them first identify opportunities, assess those opportunities, and then actually help the research team within the program to move faster using our tools. And so that first deal that we signed in July, the first molecule out of 10 has been announced already. It's called Vinder Tx, and it's a $17.5 million partnership in milestones and royalties that are paid to us. And it's an oncology drug, precision oncology. I don't think we disclosed, or they disclosed the target, so I will not go there. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's academia. It's a number of industry partnerships, and we're trying different business models. Like we have a joint venture with one of the oncology therapeutics companies. We do have this sort of milestone revenue, more like traditional research collaboration deal, and we do have 2 internal targets, one in obesity and one in Parkinson's.
So yeah, those are internal
yes,
projects.
Those are fully owned. Yes.
Yeah.
Those 2.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you look at the, I picture this as sort of a winnowing down, right? Like you start optic, you've got a bunch of potential applications in multiple verticals, and then you get excited about the biotech opportunity. And there's an immediate use case, an immediate application that you get to try out and test out. When you survey the biotech landscape and you open your mind up to applications beyond those that you tested early, that you played with early, what do you see? What do you see that you're compelled to perhaps pursue in terms of applications for your technology?
That's a great question, because I'm being very honest here. We started with the use case that just fell on our lap because we had technology and we had someone who wanted to use this technology for hit ID. And then like later on, a few months in, you realize that actually that's how most of the first wave of AI drug discovery companies back in 2014 started, like Adam Weiss and Insilica. Everyone started with sort of, okay, small molecules, hit ID. We're going to do some sort of virtual screening technology that will be fast, and whatnot. And so, our tech was, it seems to be working really well. But truth is, it's a pretty crowded space, and it is one of many use cases that need to be solved. And now that we've been at it for a while, we're of course expanding our offering to many more new ideas. Like as I mentioned, for example, by opportunity assessment and tools for investors is kind of a direct result of this better understanding of the landscape. All that said, I think it's pretty clear that we have not, as an industry, we have not solved any of those use cases completely, entirely. It's not like you have a fully generalizable model right now that enables zero-shot de novo small molecule discovery, right? Like, no, or de novo zero-shot for anything, actually, not just small molecules. So there's tons of opportunity at every stage. But as someone mentioned to me, if you want to speed up drug discovery and you're focusing on preclinical tools, it's like you're speeding up the trip from San Francisco to London by speeding up Uber to the airport. And yeah, like it makes sense. Of course, like vast majority of time and money goes into clinical trials. And, I do believe that eventually we will get to the point where we'll be ready to create like digital twins for at least the animal models. And then like maybe at some point, like far, far, far in the future for humans. And so that would be a whole different world. We're nowhere near that yet. But I think for now, realistically, where there is a lot of opportunity, like the initial hit ID, sure, great. Like there's our technology, there's other technologies out there. Something has been happening, and like I think right now with new neural net architectures, like generative AI, wave of AI, let's call it this way, we have a chance to make it way better. But I do believe that there's a lot of opportunity in multi-parameter optimization, and so like hit to lead and lead opt phases. That's also preclinical, but it's not solved, and there's a lot of stuff that will be happening there. And I see a lot of teams doing a great job at this stages. When it comes to clinical stages, I haven't touched it enough to understand it deeply, but it's also clear to me that there's a bunch of low-hanging fruits. Like, for example, I've been chatting with someone about medical consent procedure when you're trying to enroll a patient in the clinical trials. And it's not solved. The user experience of this procedure is like really, really complex right now. And I think, it's a completely different type of AI technology. But if you imagine like a better designed AI-based consent procedure, that could really make a difference. Because, I'm used to, at Google, you're used to making a small change and creating like millions of dollars of value using this little change, because the overall volume of customers is so big. So in clinical trials, that's where 1% change, 1% increase in efficiency can actually mean tens of millions of dollars of value saved, or in other words, generated for the customer. So that is a huge opportunity too. Like we are remaining in preclinical for now, but as I mentioned before, we're expanding beyond into sort of opportunity analysis and detecting new investment opportunities for investors, which is an interesting, different play. Overall, the industry, I think, the next big frontier, like we're going to figure out chemistry with AI. I think that's pretty clear at this point. But figuring out biology is a whole different game, right? When you design a molecule that theoretically, even like with wet lab validation, like in our cases, we're very proud that the molecules we generate in silico then work well in the wet lab, and you run your assays, and yes, it binds, and yes, like the potency is there, and you're excited. This is not a drug, and this molecule put in a living cell and the whole complexity of it, and then in a living tissue, and then a living organ, and a living body is a whole different level of complexity, which we're not even approaching yet. And I think the next frontier for the AI drug discovery industry, of course, is modeling biology, and which is why I see a lot of my, some of the smartest people I met at Google actually getting there. Like Dave Burke, who used to be the engineering manager for my YouTube mobile team back in the day, and then he was the leader at the Android team, recently announced that he is joining Arc Institute to work on cell models. Steph, who used to be a product manager, Stefan Grieken, who used to be the product manager, like fellow product manager at Google, and his partner Daniel Daincho, who used to be an engineering manager on YouTube mobile as well. They co-founded. I'm not sure if Daniel is co-founder, but they both are at Cradle. And they are, doing protein generation with AI. So my point is, more and more people who I consider some of the smartest people I ever worked with are moving into this field of solving biology with AI, which is, I think, the next level of complexity after chemistry.